Hello and welcome to another episode of He Says, She Says Film Reviews. I'm Dave G.
And I'm Lee G.
And today we're taking a look at the greatest, Disney blockbuster that's out right now. It's called Cruella. And this is part of this, I guess you could call it franchise, that Disney have been trying to do where they're going back and doing kind of prequel movies for their greatest villains. Now we saw it with Maleficent, with Angelina Jolie, where they told the true story of what many of us grew up knowing as the Wicked Witch from the Disney world. And this time they're very interestingly picked Cruella, who most of us would know as the dog killer from the animated 101 Dalmatians movies that we've seen over the years, and of course the real life one with Glenn Close as well. Now, this one goes back to have a look at a character called Estella, who is played by Emma Stone in this film, and it shows how she became Cruella as she was trying to live her life. So, first of all, as a street urchin, stealing stuff with her friends Jasper, played by Joel Fry, and Horace, played by Paul Walter Hauser. And then when she becomes a kind of fashion designer, working for the Baroness, played by Emma Thompson, she starts to learn some secrets from her own life, and that's how she ends up becoming Cruella. And I won't give away any of those things that she discovers, but this is a pretty interesting film, considering that Disney have decided to give a backstory to a character that most people would refer to as a dog killer. So what did you think of Cruella as a film?
I thought that the character of Estella / Cruella was really intriguing because it really showed the good versus evil of her character coming out in different ways throughout the film, and her need to survive versus her hopes and dreams and being put down, and also the things she learns about her life which cause her to, I suppose, become revengeful as well. All that comes out. So you really do have empathy for her character, and you certainly don't hate her character through the movie. You actually have sympathy and empathy for her.
You're barracking for her for a lot of the film.
Yeah, you are barracking for her, without giving too much away. But yeah, you feel sorry for what she's been through, and you actually do want her to have some kind of success. And yeah, you just see how all that plays out. I love that you saw her as a child as well. And so, you know, the actor, her name's Tipper, she's 12 years old, who plays Estella. She does a really good job. I think she really brings something to the film from get-go, where you start to understand that I suppose the character was born different in a way, but then has the complexity of what she's had to deal with in life, and the things that she learns about herself and her family. And then Emma Stone takes over, of course, as she grows up as the actress, and does a really good job there as well. I love the costume designs. I love that they used real Dalmatians. It wasn't all CGI. And so there's a lot of creativity within the movie, which is something that always draws me in. And yeah, there's a few different characters, especially a couple of the young people who start off the film, and then of course you've got many different actors, and Emma Thompson, the Baroness, she does really well in her role, and helps, I suppose, shape who Estella / Cruella becomes. So I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, she really does an amazing job. You really believe the character that Emma Thompson is playing, and you often have feelings towards her character as well.
Yeah, and she beat out some top competition to get the role too. Apparently, Emma Thompson was auditioning as an opponent to Nicole Kidman and Charlize Theron for that part. So she had some pretty stiff competition to try and get that role. I think what surprised me most with this movie was the darkness of it, because it is a Disney film, but this is definitely not a movie for kids, which is quite a surprise. The only film that I think this movie comes close to is Joker, another movie that shows a character's descent into becoming a villain. There's a lot of similarities between the two films, including the actual darkness of the film itself. And I'm hoping that some parents out there haven't taken their kids along to see Cruella thinking that it's going to be another Disney movie, because I know a lot of people out there had some issues with the darkness in the first Maleficent film, and I reckon this one goes even darker. The director is Craig Gillespie, an Australian filmmaker who most people would probably know for the movie he made with Margot Robbie a few years ago called I, Tonya. But I just love what he did with this movie. He's brought this real epic scale to the film. It's set during the punk era of the 1970s and the early 1980s in the UK. And he captures that time period so well. There's like anarchy UK slogans everywhere throughout this movie. The Union Jack plays a big part, of course, because bands like the Sex Pistols were using that as their kind of anarchy in the UK slogan. The soundtrack for this is amazing. I mentioned the Sex Pistols, the Clash, the Rolling Stones. All their music gets used in this film. And they use it really creatively, almost like Moulin Rouge style, the way they use it. The other actor I really liked in this film was John McCree, who plays Artie, who's kind of a guy who sells secondhand fashion that ends up befriending Estella. I loved his role in this film. I thought he played it so well. I love all of the twists and turns that this film takes and the way that Craig Gillespie tells that story. I should warn people, though, that this is a little bit of a long film, so it goes for 2 hours and 14 minutes. So if you're expecting a nice, tidy, short Disney film, you're not going to get that with this. But what did you think of the atmosphere for this film? Because I loved it. I thought it had a dark, gothic kind of Moulin Rouge feel to it in 70s London.
Yeah, that's very much the type of feel that I like to have in a movie. It almost had, to me, a bit of an Oliver Twist feel to it.
Yeah.
As I was watching it, I don't know why, but it reminded me of that, with this being a much more modern, version. But of course, it's a very different storyline, but at the same time, it just had that feel to it. But I really loved, I think that's why I like the costumes and the scenery and all of that as well, because it gave that certain style to it that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, and what did you think of Emma Stone in it? Because I know there was a fair bit of criticism about the fact that she got the lead role when she's not a British actress, but which was kind of ironic because no British actress has ever played Cruella in any of the adaptations that's happened. So what did you think of Emma Stone in that role?
Yeah, obviously there's a number of actresses that you may think could do the role well, but I think Emma Stone has put a lot of effort into getting the character right. I think that it really shows through that she's spent time understanding her character and, really portraying the character well. So I thought she did a really, really good job of it, but I think it's because she's I'm not saying that actors don't put time into their characters, but I think in this case it just really shines through that she's done some of that homework.
Yeah, she spent a lot of time talking to Glenn Close, who played Cruella in the other live-action version of 101 Dalmatians, and Glenn Close was actually an executive producer on this film as well. So yeah, I've read that Emma Stone spent a lot of time picking her brain about Cruella as a character, because I guess she's kind of in that almost weird position where she's playing the character almost prior to Glenn Close, because she's becoming what Glenn Close played. I love the Dalmatians in it as well. They really add to this film. And it's interesting because early on in this film, the Dalmatians are the villains, of course, which is the opposite of 101 Dalmatians, where the Dalmatians are the good guys and Cruella is the bad guy.
And I think, too, just with Emma Stone's character, and I mentioned it earlier, but to have your audience liking what some people would call more villain, for her character as she becomes Cruella, that love-hate kind of, connection with that character does go, there's things you wish that she would make different choices about, but because you can understand where those choices came from, you do have that empathy and sympathy. And I think as an actress that's hard to bring to a character for your audience to have that love-hate for you. Some people do it really well. There are villains that people love, and I think in this role she's done that well.
Yeah, and like Joaquin Phoenix did with Joker, she plays the two roles very differently. Estella is very quiet and naive almost, and then when Cruella is bold, brash, will go and do a great big graffiti sign like on a wall or something like that. There's two very different roles there, and I think that's like what Joaquin Phoenix did with Joker, where he had the two different characters playing out as well, and I think Emma Stone did an absolutely brilliant job there. So for me, this is one of my biggest surprises of this year. I did not go into this movie expecting to absolutely fall in love with it the way that I did. So what are you going to give this one out of 5?
I'm going to give it 4 out of 5. For me, it was just that little bit long.
Yeah.
But we did go to the drive-in at the time with all the restrictions and COVID and everything. We were very lucky to see it. It was the night before we went back down into lockdown, and we had to be home by 11:59 p.m. and we got here at about 11:58 p.m. back home. We just made it home, and we just made seeing the film, and I may have personally just felt it was a bit long because I was a bit stressed about the time as well. So I'm not saying that it was too long to watch, but I was starting to fidget a little bit. Probably about 20 minutes before the end of the film, I thought, it felt just a bit long, but I'll take responsibility in that because it may have just been that I myself was a little bit stressed about the time.
Yeah, I did too. I gave it 4.5 out of 5, and the reason I took that half star off was because of the length. I thought there was a little bit of a lull patch in the middle of the movie. I also felt that, and we haven't mentioned him up until now, I thought the film underused the character of John the valet, played by Mark Strong. His character really comes out in the second half of the film to play a really important part. And I remember spending the first half of this movie looking at it going, why is an actor of the caliber of Mark Strong kind of playing this character that's silent in most scenes? And I thought the director and the screenwriter should have used that character earlier on, because if they were trying to put that character in as a plant for the twists and turns for the second half of the movie, it doesn't work, because as soon as you see Mark Strong that character is going to have an important part at some stage. So you might as well use him early on instead of wasting Mark Strong's time having him stand there as a silent guy for a lot of the film. So 4.5 from me, and it loses that half star just because it was, I thought, a little bit too long, and 4 stars from you. And that's it for this episode with Cruella. I've been Dave G.
And I'm Lee G.
And we'll be back soon with another episode.